When people first study cybersecurity, they often stay in the digital world, thinking about passwords, malware, and networks, and they treat physical security as a separate topic handled by someone else. In operational technology, OT, that separation is a mistake because physical access is often the simplest way to gain cyber access, especially in environments filled with cabinets, ports, removable media, and specialized equipment. Physical security is not just about preventing theft. It is about controlling who can get close enough to touch systems that influence control and safety. A person standing in the right room can plug in a device, reset hardware, alter wiring, insert media, or observe sensitive information on screens and labels. Even if your network segmentation is strong, physical access can bypass many digital controls by moving the attacker closer to the assets. For brand new learners, the important shift is to see physical security as part of the same trust model as cybersecurity. Badges, readers, biometrics, and turnstiles are not just building features. They are control points that determine whether your OT environment is defensible or porous. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Badges are one of the most common physical security controls because they scale across large organizations and provide a convenient way to identify people and manage access. A badge can represent that someone has been vetted to a certain level and is allowed into certain areas during certain times. Beginners sometimes assume badges are inherently strong security, but a badge is only as meaningful as the process behind it and the rules that govern its use. If badges are shared, borrowed, or routinely propped open through social habits, they become symbols rather than controls. In OT, badge discipline matters because the areas being protected may contain systems that can affect physical processes, such as control rooms, network closets, or engineering workstations. A well-run badge program includes strong identity verification before a badge is issued, rapid revocation when someone leaves or changes roles, and clear mapping from job function to access level. It also includes logging, because badge usage creates a record of who entered where and when, which can support investigations and reinforce accountability. The goal is not to treat everyone as suspicious, but to make access intentional and traceable. Badge readers are the devices that enforce badge-based access, and they matter because they are the gatekeepers that translate policy into reality. A reader can be installed at doors, gates, or other entry points, and it decides whether a badge is allowed to unlock access. Beginners might think the reader is a simple lock, but readers are part of a broader access control system that can include centralized management, time-of-day rules, and monitoring of unusual patterns. In an OT context, readers are especially important at entry points to restricted zones, such as areas containing control system servers, engineering workstations, and network infrastructure that supports segmentation. If an attacker can reach the wiring closet or the control room, they often gain opportunities that are hard to replicate remotely. A good physical security design uses readers to establish layers, so not everyone who can enter the building can enter the most sensitive areas. Readers also support the principle of least privilege in the physical domain by allowing fine-grained control over where different roles can go. When physical least privilege is aligned with cyber least privilege, the environment becomes much harder to compromise through simple on-site access. A common beginner misunderstanding is that physical access controls only matter for outsiders, when insiders and trusted visitors can be equally relevant. Many OT environments rely on contractors, integrators, and vendor technicians, and those people may need access to sensitive areas to perform legitimate work. The risk is not that they exist. The risk is that access may be overly broad, poorly supervised, or left enabled long after the work is done. Badge systems can help manage this by issuing temporary badges, limiting access to specific zones, and enforcing time windows that match approved maintenance schedules. Readers can enforce those rules automatically, making it harder for someone to wander into a restricted area outside their scope. This is an example of how physical security supports operational governance rather than fighting it. If you have a disciplined process for granting and revoking access, you can still support necessary work while reducing exposure. Beginners should also recognize that physical security controls can reduce the need for constant human gatekeeping because well-designed systems apply rules consistently. Consistency is a form of fairness and a form of security because it reduces exceptions that attackers can exploit. Biometrics are sometimes presented as a futuristic answer to identity verification, and they can provide strong benefits when used correctly, but beginners need a balanced view. Biometrics use physical characteristics, such as fingerprints, facial features, or iris patterns, to verify identity. The main advantage is that biometrics are harder to share casually than a badge or a password, and they can reduce certain kinds of misuse. However, biometrics also introduce operational and privacy considerations, and they are not magic. Biometric systems can have false rejects, meaning they deny access to legitimate users, and in an OT environment that can create operational delays at critical times. They can also have false accepts, meaning they allow someone who should not be allowed, which is obviously a security risk. Another important concept is that you cannot change your fingerprint the way you can change a password, so if biometric data is mishandled, the risk can be long-term. In OT, biometrics are often best used for higher sensitivity areas where the operational cost of stronger verification is justified, such as control rooms, safety-related zones, or rooms containing critical network and server infrastructure. The goal is to match the strength of the control to the criticality of the asset being protected. Turnstiles are a physical control that often seems mundane, but in security design they are powerful because they address a very common problem: tailgating, which is when someone follows an authorized person through an entry point without presenting their own credentials. In many organizations, people naturally hold doors for others, and that kindness can undermine access control systems. Turnstiles create a physical constraint that makes tailgating harder because they are designed to allow one person through per authorization event. For beginners, this is a useful lesson in human behavior. Security controls often fail not because people are malicious, but because people are social and hurried. Turnstiles also create a visible checkpoint, which can change behavior by making access actions more deliberate. In OT facilities, turnstiles may be used at building entry points or at the boundaries between general office areas and industrial areas. Their value is greatest where the organization needs to ensure that only properly authorized individuals can reach sensitive zones. Turnstiles also support auditability by producing a more reliable record of entry events, because each person must authenticate individually. When physical entry is traceable, investigating incidents becomes faster and less ambiguous. The deeper principle tying badges, readers, biometrics, and turnstiles together is the idea of layered physical access control, which mirrors defense in depth in the cyber domain. A badge might get you into the building, a reader-controlled door might get you into the industrial area, a turnstile might ensure one person per entry, and a biometric might protect the most critical room. This layering prevents a single mistake or compromise from granting unrestricted access everywhere. For example, if a badge is lost, layered controls limit where that badge can be misused. If a person is allowed into a general area, they may still not be allowed into network closets or control rooms without additional authorization. Beginners should see that physical security design is not about creating a fortress that blocks work. It is about controlling pathways in a way that matches operational realities. In OT, many problems come from uncontrolled pathways, such as unlocked doors, shared keys, and informal access practices. By creating layered and documented entry control, you reduce the chance that an attacker can simply walk into the wrong place and gain powerful opportunities. Physical security also supports cybersecurity by protecting the places where digital boundaries are enforced, such as network access points, wiring panels, and equipment racks. A well-designed network segmentation plan can be undermined if someone can physically access a switch and connect a rogue device, or if they can access a cabinet and attach to an exposed port. Similarly, security monitoring can be undermined if someone can access sensors or logging devices and disrupt them. Beginners often focus on the control system devices themselves, but the infrastructure around them is equally important. If you protect the perimeters of rooms where critical infrastructure lives, You make it harder to tamper with the environment and easier to detect attempts. Physical access logs can also be correlated with cyber events, which is powerful for investigation. If you see a configuration change on a server and the physical access logs show no authorized entry to the server room, that might suggest remote access, compromised credentials, or a misreported change window. If you see an anomaly and the access logs show a technician entered at that time, that might help explain it. This kind of correlation turns physical security into part of the evidence system. A common misconception is that physical security is either purely about stopping intruders or purely about compliance checklists. But in OT, it should be framed as operational risk reduction. Many physical security controls also improve safety by preventing untrained or unauthorized individuals from entering hazardous areas. They help protect equipment from accidental damage and protect processes from accidental interference. This matters because not all harmful events are malicious. A curious visitor opening the wrong cabinet can cause disruptions too. Physical security controls also support orderly workflows because they encourage planned access rather than ad hoc wandering. For beginners, it is important to understand that security controls should reduce the chance of both malicious and accidental harm. The same badge system that stops an intruder can also ensure that only trained personnel enter a control room during critical operations. The same turnstile that prevents tailgating can also reduce crowding in sensitive areas. When physical security is framed this way, it becomes easier to align it with operational priorities rather than treating it as an external imposition. Designing physical security for OT also requires thinking about failure modes, because controls that are too strict without contingency can create operational problems during emergencies. For example, if access systems fail during a crisis, you still need a safe way for responders and operators to reach critical areas quickly. Beginners should understand that resilience applies to physical controls as well. There should be clear procedures for emergency access that do not devolve into permanent bypasses. If an emergency override exists, it must be governed and audited so it is not abused. Similarly, if biometrics fail to recognize a legitimate user due to gloves, dirt, or environmental conditions, there must be a reliable alternative that maintains security without blocking safe operation. This is where physical security must be designed with the environment in mind, because industrial settings can be harsh and can affect reader reliability and biometric usability. Good designs choose controls that fit the context and include procedures for when controls fail. That combination supports both security and safety because it prevents security from becoming a hazard during critical moments. When you bring these elements together, the practical skill is learning to map physical access controls to the criticality of assets and the realities of how work is performed. Badges provide broad identity and scalable control, readers enforce zone-based permissions, biometrics strengthen identity verification in high-consequence areas, and turnstiles reduce common human behavior weaknesses like tailgating. In OT, these controls protect not only property, but also the pathways to cyber influence, because physical access can lead directly to network access, device access, and configuration access. The best designs create layered control without obstructing legitimate operations, using time windows, role-based access, and clear logging to balance security and usability. For new learners, the most important takeaway is that physical security is not separate from cybersecurity in OT. It is one of the first and most important layers of defense. When you can control who can reach the systems, you reduce the number of ways the systems can be compromised, and you create evidence that supports investigation and recovery. That is how physical access controls become part of a security posture that is both practical and provable.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.